Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the PRC-IAPN Roundtable discussion. Tonight's topic is on spirituality versus theology. Prior to getting started, let's go around the table, introduce our panel, or have our panel introduce themselves. So, starting with you, Christy.
Hey, everybody. I'm Christy Mann. I'm the owner, operator, editor at Metaphysical Times.
Reverend Shadow Wolf.
I'm Reverend Shadow Wolf. I am the West Coast Director of the Pagan Rights Coalition.
I am Reverend Earl Williams, IAPN Radio and Prairie Land Radio Network.
I'm Roderick Edwards, not a reverend, and author of 20 different books. Not a pagan, I don't think.
Ishmael Diaz, creator of We Are Witch, We Are Young Witches, My Craft, and We Are Witch Latino.
And I'm Edward Sott, head of the Pagan Rights Coalition, United Pagan Charities Cooperative, and also the managing editor of the Full Moon at the Metaphysical Times. So welcome everybody to our show this evening. We're going to discuss this. We're going to start this discussion with a little bit of history here, because the fact that a lot of people do not know the difference between spirituality and religion and where it actually stems from. Back in the age of dawn of mankind, actually, there was a practice called animism, and that was where people believed in that everything possessed a spirit. And up until a long time, people did not know how to deal with the spirits that everything possessed. So they turned around and they just basically didn't have any. They just believed everything was a spirit. You know, everything had one. Well, this man comes along. I'll call him the shaman or the P.T. Barnum of his age. Actually, he says, "I can talk to the spirits." Right. This is the foundation of religion. This is how religion actually got formed. Because once that shaman turned around and said that religion happens, you know, that I have to talk to the spirits, everybody started asking, well, what do we have to do to communicate with the spirits too? Why do we need an intermediary? And so forth. And how do we get an intermediary to talk to the creator? So this is where religion actually got its formation and foundation.
Some of that practice is still done in Puerto Rico when we actually kill our pigs for Christmas. We just don't go and slaughter them in the backyard. We actually pray to whatever God that is at the moment that we think of and give thanks for the grace of this wonderful animal that's going to be fed to us and to our family. And so even in Puerto Rico at this time, sometimes you still see that going on.
You see that in a lot of Native American practice too.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So
exactly,
animism formed into what's now, you know, has its foundation behind what spirituality is about. I believe spirituality. Theology formed from an idea and concept that man had needed an intermediary to connect with the spirit, and the intermediary was basically the formation of religion, the first thing of religion. Now, religion has its benefits, though, and theology has its benefits. And the benefits are cultural more than anything else. It helped man create a cultural society. It helped man develop from a tribal basis, right, and an individualistic approach to a more societal approach, where man started being able to get along more with man and more things. Now, so spirituality is incorporated into theology, okay, even to this day. But the problem we have in modern theology versus modern spirituality is there is a loss. There's a loss of spirituality in theology because theology turned dogmatic in its premises. Would you agree with that, Roderick?
Please define dogmatic for us.
Okay, dogmatic is the principle of the fact is that man's control of man, basically setting laws, guidelines, moral code, etc. Yes, it helped extend into cultural society and allowed us to interact in cultures, in various different cultural societies, by having a set of laws or dictates to follow that become the rule of thumb, if you will, within each individual culture. But dogmatism also has a negative effect too, because it's a way of man controlling man. It's ego driven. like you see in a lot of modern theologies, our way is the only way. Our way is the only way to creation. It's not the same. It's not the same. That's what I mean by dogmatic.
So my only disagreement on the definitions in general so far is that theology, really, if you boil it down to it, is the study of God or the study of deities, whatever they are. Whereas spirituality is just the concept of the human creature, we'll call it creature, beast, whatever you want to call it, animal, realize or thinking that there's something more to them than their physical form. That, to me, is the basis of spirituality. Whereas theology is just the study of deities. Whether they're true or not, people want to study a deity. Theology.
Okay, that makes perfect sense too. I will agree with that. And theology itself is a study of. You were going to say something, Christy?
Well, that's accurate. That's not wrong. But I think in the context that we were coming here to talk about tonight, I think it's more the dogma versus spirituality, not necessarily theology. The study of, and more the definition of spirituality versus the definition of theology isn't what's.
Maybe it's more if we're going to rename the show in a way, and as we're going on the fly here, it'd be spirituality against organized religion to some degree, maybe.
Well, yeah.
More or less, yeah, I think so. And it's hard to separate them out. I mean, their spirituality is incorporated into theology just from different perspectives.
Right. Hypothetically, we have all these different religions, whether it's Christianity or Islam, or hypothetically, one or more could actually be correct, and all these other religions could be wrong, hypothetically. So therefore, the clergy of that religion, as they explain their religion, could be accurate. They could be the true keepers of truth, if you want to call it that, hypothetically.
Each one of them have different views on pretty much everything, and because not all religions are going to see things the same way.
So is it more universal truth versus human truth?
I mean, what would you set as what an actual universal truth is, though? Because that's why people practice religion and stuff, is it's that faith in their religion that makes them say, just like Christians say, the only way to go to heaven is this. And, Muslims say the only way to Allah is following this path and these teachings, so on and so forth. So it's more, I guess it's more of a faith driven than an actual, and I completely spaced it. I'm sorry.
Well,
more than a universal truth.
Yeah. It's more
universal
faith.
Truth is open to interpretation.
Exactly, and that's a big thing with what you see in modern day religion is it is more dogmatic in the sense that it's man trying to govern man, saying, "Oh, well, you practice this lifestyle, that goes against what my beliefs are, so you're going to hell, or you're going here, or you're going there." It's trying to dictate how somebody should live their life based off a moral code that has been set by that religion, instead of a moral code that is set just by the individual person on what they believe their morals should be versus what society says these are what your morals should be, which we discussed last week in our round table.
No, you were going to say something there, Roderick?
Well, I was thinking before we even get to that point, all those points are valid, but before we get to that point, you brought up animism. So if we could try to imagine humans at the very start, lightning and thunder and whatever else, natural things that happen around us as human beings, first experiencing, we start ascribing to it some kind of power, a deity, a spirit, or whatever it might be. So where does that go wrong when we start getting to religions? Because even religions and faith ascribe to, you know, things that happen in life in general as being controlled by a deity, whether it's Allah or Jesus or Yahweh, Yahweh, any of these things. They still say that some kind of deity or some kind of spirit world is controlling it.
Who's calling it wrong? I don't think any of them are inherently wrong. They just may not be what I believe or what Shadow Wolf or anybody else believes. And I think that's where the disconnect happens.
Right.
It's a matter of what I believe is what I believe, and in some instances, it might be congruent with what you believe. What I believe is different from what you believe doesn't make it wrong, and yet that's what religion teaches.
But and I will tend to agree with this without getting into a fight about religion versus thing, because the fact is that there is still validity in religion. There is a spirituality that's entailed in religion.
Right, that's what I was trying to say.
And as Shadow Wolf said, and as Roderick has said, it is faith-driven. It is a belief system that is entirely set upon the idea that there is something greater than ourselves.
A spiritual world.
In the spiritual, that has a spiritual role. That the spiritual world, there's something greater than ourselves that is controlling and working amongst us in creation. The universality of that is that it exists in all things, including animistic society, including spiritualistic society, and including religious societies. The foundation of religion, however, as also Shadow will point out, and as you pointed out, Roderick, right, is that, and as was pointed out by Christy actually, and Sharon, that we have this tendency towards, when it comes to religion, okay, which does have its essence in spirituality, it's also dictated by man. Because it's man trying to understand and place limitations on the infinite, because he doesn't understand it, so he's trying to reduce it to his own level of understanding. In the original animistic society, man would not reduce things to their own understanding because they did not have a reduction. They didn't have that aspect of trying to control their with ego and stuff like that. Instead, what they tried doing instead, right, is they tried just accepting that there was something greater than themselves in control. I apologize for my phone ringing. I will not answer.
So this would be my question then to you, Ed. Would be, wouldn't you say that that's also happening inside paganism nowadays? Also, the same thing that's happening in modern day religion, where you have these quote unquote gatekeepers of whatever path that they follow, saying you have to follow this specific path, you have to practice these certain rites, you have to do this, you have to do that, and I mean, you know, while we practice a spiritual path, you have that dogma that's starting to come into paganism by people that feel that their path is the only true path in paganism versus where we try to encompass everything.
Okay. Now, Jessica's got a question here. Do you feel your faith is your truth?
Actually, I feel that all faith is everyone's truth. There is
I agree with Brother Edward.
And faith is the faith is the key aspect of it. Your faith or belief in what you believe in is your actual truth. It's the only true universal truth. Now, as for Shadow Wolf's comment on dogmatism in modern pagan society, yes, indeed, there is a beginning to develop in this, and I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I have seen it myself.
So have I.
The problem, the thing we need to remember, though, even as pagans and as human beings, right, that spirituality and religion go hand in hand in a lot of ways. But like I said, being spiritual as well, we should also remember that we are not the equivalent of the higher power at all. That we should not try to bring the higher power down to our level of understanding, rather just accepting it as it exists. That's where true spirituality comes into play. Now, I'm going to say true spirituality, even though it's kind of like a ironic term in this case, because there is no one universal truth except for one truth that I know is universal, that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. That's a demonstrated truth that we see in regular life every day, you know. But other than that, I don't believe there is one universal truth. There are many, and it's the seeker. The wise person seeks the truth regardless of its source. That's the truth. That's the aspect of wisdom that comes along with being a spiritual person, I believe. You know, and these are my opinion. You know, these are opinions. These are not entirely. You know, I'm not going to say this, express this as a way. I'm not going to religious bash or anything else in this topic. In fact, is I'm trying to join together and unify the whole aspect of religion, theology, and spirituality, how they do go hand in hand. At the same token, we also have to recognize the nature of both. Where is it where man's ego takes control of spirituality? This is the question that we all have to look at. Anyone disagree?
I don't think so.
I think man's ego is the equivalent of why things are so messed up right now in many ways.
Right.
Because of that ego, you know, man has tried to dominate 90% of the planet right now and has failed miserably. Even in religions, they still messing up because nobody seems to get it right.
That's very true. That is very true.
They fight to be right rather than to just be.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, then at that point, it's like, okay, what is right? You know, it's open to interpretation.
That's true.
I mean, you know,
my right to not be your right.
Exactly, and I mean, you know, and that's the thing is you see wars fought over people trying to be right, trying to say, well, we're the ones in the right and you're the ones in the wrong, and you know, to them that might actually be, you know, quote unquote ultimate truth.
Right.
To the rest of the world, it might not be. You know, it depends on the individual person.
And the one biggest war that's been going on for centuries now has all come down to a big family feud, is the way that I've always looked at it. And here again, it is all ego driven. And also the fact that ego has tended to cause a lot of rifts, disagreements, and division in pretty much every religion, including paganism.
Okay, so wait a minute. So hypothetically, not hypothetically, but actually, if we look at Siddhartha Gautama, you know, Buddha, he believed that something happened to him under a tree, I believe, if I recall right my story of him correctly. We have Moses, who went to the top of the mountain. We have Jesus. We have Joseph Smith Jr., who found the golden plates in upstate New York. We have Muhammad, who also had this vision. Now, right now, we say our truth, the truth. Now, let's suppose all of these people actually had some kind of experience. So because they had that experience, they're going to think that the spiritual world was talking to them, and therefore what they have to say to the rest of the people. Now, we could just assume that they're all liars and con men and they're just making it up, or we could assume they actually had some kind of spiritual experience. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think these people had spiritual experiences, or they made it up?
Well, who? First of all, who are we to judge? Because first, we weren't there.
Right.
Yeah, we weren't there, so we
don't know. Our guess, in fact, my guess could be as good as anyone on this panel right now.
Let me put it this way. is there a being out there that created the universe and created everything around us? I mean, all you gotta do is just look at the world. And I'm sorry, but everybody talks about the Big Bang and all this, these atoms splitting and exploding, whatever. Well, who created the atoms? There is some being out there that is a supernatural being that probably did create everything, but to label it, whether you call it God, Yahweh, whatever, no. And that's where the spiritual aspect comes in. Did these people actually have a spiritual experience? Who knows? Is it possible? 95% yes.
Mm-hmm.
In their own way, for whatever they believed in, they probably did have some kind of supernatural, spiritual experience.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's one or the other. I mean, it is hard to tell because we don't know definitely at all whether in paganism or anything freaking
What
that's
are the
an
oldest-
actual thing.
So let's assume for a moment those spiritual experiences are true, just for a moment, for our sake of
Mhm.
argument. Okay, obviously, as we talked about before, I think Earl mentioned this, that they contradict the things that they got from these spiritual experiences. Not all the dogma that comes along later on, but just the immediate experiences. Some of the immediate things that we're told sometimes contradict each other. So
Right.
what are we to do with that? If there's only one being, which I'm not saying I agree with that, but if there's only one being, shouldn't that message be the same or fairly the same or consistent to all these different people?
Not necessarily.
No.
Not necessarily. And I'll
No.
explain why in a few seconds.
Okay.
One of the oldest questions in the realm of man itself is: did man create God or God create man? That's the oldest and most unanswered question. Who created which?
Well,
Okay.
Shadow Wolf said it was obvious. So in a way, obvious that there's some kind of, to me, that's the epitome of spiritualism. Looking around and saying, obviously, we are not here by our own random
no.
chance.
No. So the thing about it is, within spirituality, I feel that spirituality is more id driven versus ego driven by the id. Thus, did these people have a spiritual experience, and though there's differentiations in each of their spiritual beliefs, the one common ground is yes, they had a spiritual experience. The message may be different and unclear to those, except for those who were surrounded these individuals, such as Buddha, such as Gautama Buddha, such as Yeshua ben Joseph, such as Muhammad. Okay.
Did you guys ever play the game telephone in school?
Yes, it's a lot like telephone in school. I totally agree with you.
Do you remember how that game played? You whispered a secret in somebody's ear, and then they had to go tell the next person, and then the last person in line had to shout out what it was that the secret that they heard was, and it's nothing at all.
Yeah, right.
Nothing at
Right.
all like what the original secret that was told was.
Well, I think it also boils down to if that's that spiritual being, if they did have that spiritual experience with the spiritual being, is there would be many facets to that being. That being just wouldn't be one way. So it would have moods and stuff just like we do. It would have mannerisms just like we do. And who knows, maybe one of them caught it on an off day and just had a really bad experience with it. I mean, there's all kinds of concepts you can look at.
There's so many ways to look at it.
Yeah,
You're right.
it's
so many ways to go about it.
Yeah.
When religion started, correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, give me a time frame. When did religion start?
Caveman.
I would say, and Reverend Shadow Wolf is right. The dawn of the Homo sapien.
The moment lightning struck or thunder happened. Oh my God, where's that coming from?
No.
Okay. When Roderick mentioned the story of Buddha under the tree, Moses in the bush, and all of those being a very similar experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
At what point was that story pulled in history originally? Was it Moses' story? Was it Buddha's story?
Moses was albino.
Considering Buddha existed long before Moses' existence, according to actual textual, books and apocrypha and everything else that you can actually get into in the study of theology, and this is where theology comes into play. The actual history of religion, like I said, is the development of man going from an animistic society to a more controlled society by someone claiming that they could talk to the spirits.
How
this would have occurred.
How big would we estimate the world population at that time be?
Of Homo sapiens, actually, no one's 100% certain, and no one can give an actual time period.
It could be a few thousand. It could be a few 100,000. We don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't know for a fact.
We don't know.
Right.
I can tell you it's way less than 8-point-something billion what we
Pretty
have
sure.
right now.
Right.
I'm pretty sure.
And it was concentrated on what was it called? Pangea.
Pangaea or Pangaea.
Okay. Everybody lived in the same place.
We were all one. We
person
were all big
had
and
a
happy family.
spiritual experience, and the 25,000 people around them got told, and then it was past the secret. It was telephone. From there, out over generation after generation after generation after generation.
I'm not
Of perspective.
I cannot disagree with you, Christy, because of the fact that during the time of that time period, and I've actually done the mathematics on this. Okay, Pangaea happened during the second Pleiadic era, or second Precambrian era, as the other thing is known. It was other known as, and during that time period and during that era, which is 250 million BCE. Okay. There was also a great deluge or a great flood that occurred because the Pangaea had actually broken due to tectonic plate separation, had broken up. Therefore, what had happened was every religion has a flood story, in it. Even in modern paganism and other, the flood story existed from that time period, going way back.
A singular event described different ways by different people.
Right.
Yeah, and it was described 100 different ways by hundreds of different people at the time, but every religion has a flood story in it.
Gilgamesh.
Now, when we were in school and we were playing the game telephone, all right, you had the person who started with the main secret, and it got passed around, and you got to the very last person, and you saw that the story was completely different from origin to ending. Was that person bad? Was that person wrong? It's what they heard. We didn't judge them. We didn't blame them. We didn't yell at them and tell them that they were absolutely wrong. I mean, it didn't happen in my classroom. I'm sure there were
We laughed at
that
them.
it did. We laughed at them. We may have ridiculed, but it didn't cause separation.
Right.
I think the crux of it is there came a point where the telephone game began to cause separation.
And so
And that probably happened around the time that the different languages evolved.
right,
That would probably be whenever that happened. That would be the crux, the catalyst that leads off to
The different religion,
But
the
different
different religious views.
Yeah.
But in the telephone game, at the very end, when it's done, when the last person, we get to hear what the original was. Here's the difference here. If there is an original, which is what you're implying, there's an original message. How do we get to that? And is it even a concern? I know you're most probably going to say no, it's not. But is it a concern to try to get back to whatever the original message was and filter through all the stuff that's been added to it? And
It would be hard. It would be very difficult to do that at this point.
It would be difficult, if not impossible. Is it necessary?
ladies and gentlemen,
That's where it becomes a gray area.
And that's what a lot of religions say. I do have the original message. This is the original message right here. I got back to it. I'm the prophet of God, whoever it is, whichever
that's
religion
how
it might be.
religion got its
Right.
formation started. We have to take a commercial break here.
I was just going to say that.
if you wouldn't mind, and then we'll get back to the show.
I predict there'll be a coffee commercial in a coffee.
I just walked into this coffee shop. You'll never guess what I found. All the help is deeply engrossed in metaphysical times. You should too. I'm at the Egyptian, 475 Park Avenue in Idaho Falls, Idaho. Get your very own copy for free, and we're open till 10.
Sister Moon, Apothecary and More is a collaboration of local island witches bringing you handcrafted tools for ritual, amazing apothecary, custom vinyl work, merchandise, and so much more. But we are not just an online store. We are a sisterhood, a platform, and a voice for everything that is magical. Join us for our famous Tarot Tuesdays from 11 to 4 Eastern Standard Time for a discounted reading with our amazing in-house intuitive reader and priestess, Wolf Spirit Energy, Beverly Overleen. You can find us on Facebook at Sister Moon Store or on the web at sistermoon.shop. So fly on over and stop in for a spell.
And we are back. And before we get cracking here, I'd like to say just a brief good evening to Pagan Coffee Talk. They're a new contact that we recently met up with over on YouTube through Iowa Pagan News. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Appreciate it.
Okay, getting back to the topic, and that's where you were at, where you were talking. We were talking about the whole aspect of the telephone game, and at the end of the telephone game, the occurrence of religion per se, with that last person with the message, "Hey, I know what the truth is. You know, this is what was told. This is the actual secret that was told," and it is practically the truth. You know what we've seen in today's world. That's what the difference is. The person with the last message became the great shaman, or the original P.T. Barnum, if you will. And I call the great shaman the P.T. Barnum because of the typical case of the sucker born every minute. Okay.
Okay.
I guess.
Got all of it.
Got him.
It removes the whole spiritual aspect when he says, well, I can reach out and I can contact the spirits and they're talking to me. Therefore, the spirits talk to me. You have to go to me. I am the intermediary. Now, you brought up a good point, Shadow, when you said you mentioned that the time of the whole breaking up the language barrier, which occurred after Pangaea.
Yep.
Occurred. Now, doing the research on that too, I also made a discovery that occurred after Moses, the story of Moses in the Bible, actually. Or not Moses, Noah, rather. The story of Noah in the Bible. Shem, Ham, and Japheth, right? Sons of Noah. And of course, whenever you are raised with, you're of course taught and you believe up to the point. Well, Ham, who did not go by his father's teachings of monotheism at that time, or monotheistic belief. Ham believed in polytheistic aspect, or multiple gods and goddesses. It says in the Holy Bible, and like I said, this is a pagan discussion, but I'll tell you what, the Holy Bible has its validity, just like any other book.
Yes, it does.
It's a very valid book and historically accurate in some regards. Okay, because there was a time period of 360 years, which would be the great grandson of Ham, Nimrod, with the Tower of Babel. Okay, and the Tower of Babel is when in the biblical story course, when it says that let us take and separate the words of man, as written in the Bible, let us separate the words of man so that they cannot communicate with each other. So they can't build this tower to reach the heaven. Okay, thus the division of the names, but thus the development of pantheism. Because if you notice, there are multiple gods and goddesses in pantheism, of course, with Ham and his Nimrod, right? He believed in multiple gods and goddesses, but you notice that most pantheons are the same in beliefs. 98% of them are the same. Like you have the Roman pantheon and Greek pantheon, which are virtually identical in aspect, historically identical. You have Zeus and Jupiter. You have Hera and Juno. You have Athena and Minerva. Both have Apollo. Okay.
So that was same place, same time, two different
languages, two different
languages, two different, yeah.
Right.
But the same happening. So when we diversified and moved across the plains, right, and everything.
Even, am I wrong in recalling this? Even the Bible doesn't claim that there aren't other gods.
No,
it just claims that you should only worship one.
Well, no, technically it says that if you go by the New Testament teachings, and a little backstory, I'm a preacher's son, so anyways, if you go by what the New Testament says, it says that Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and life. The only way to the Father is through me. However, if you go into the Old Testament, it mentions not once, not twice, but multiple times, let us. Well, who is us? There's multiple. You know, some people ascribe it to the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, but it never says that in the actual Bible itself.
Isn't one of the commandments, thou shalt have no gods above me?
Yeah,
well,
which acknowledges in that commandment, thou shalt have no other gods above me. Acknowledges in that commandment.
Acknowledges that there are multiples.
There are multiple deities. That's
no, Roderick's shaking his head no. What's your take on that, Roderick?
Okay, well, having been a Christian for many, many years and studied in the Greek and the Hebrew and the Aramaic, and I think obviously there is mentions, like Shadow Wolf said, of what some people say is the Trinity, precursors to the Trinity.
Yeah.
However, all through the Old Testament, it says, I am the one and only God. It also often says, I am the God of Isaac, Israel, and I think I missed one, and Jacob.
I am the God of Isaac.
And yeah, so anyhow, the point is that all through the Old Testament, he's making up and saying, any other gods that you might worship are idols. He even says that. They're wood, they're stone. They can't speak, they can't talk, they're dumb, they don't exist, basically, is what he's saying. So I think monotheism's built into the Old Testament as well as the New Testament.
Oh, yeah, I'm saying monotheism is built into the Old Testament.
Right, I just going to make that. Okay.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm not going to read.
No, man, you're right.
And we must always remember that both the Old and New Testament was written by man.
Well,
they have to keep that under consideration at all times. It's written and rewritten and rewritten and rewritten. Probably being written right now.
There are 36 various translations of the Bible.
So I do have a question for Roderick. What is a Christian God to you?
What is a Christian God?
To you.
Okay. I don't normally speak about myself much, but if we're speaking about what the Bible says, obviously you have Jesus who basically comes and says, I'm basically God in the flesh. I've come down, so here I am, and I'm going to go through all this. I'm going to sacrifice myself because the problem with mankind is that you're fallen. You got a sinful state. You need a sacrifice to stand in your place so you can be made holy before me, Jesus Christ, God. Yes, that's the Christian God.
But if he says if he's the son, how can he be the father at the same time?
That's been an ongoing issue between Muslims and Jews questioning Jesus and God, the whole concept of Christianity. Yes.
And now we can go back to that original argument of what has caused the dissension of consistent dissension, including wars within spiritual versus religious texts.
Right.
And religious beliefs. Spiritual beliefs, like I said, in a true sense of spirituality, one does not define the creative force. One accepts the creative force exists as it is and does not put finite limits on it. It's id-driven, not ego-driven.
Right.
Okay? Religion is ego-driven in its very essence. Its very essence is driven by man's ego. It's man's way of trying to define what the value of religion is within man. Oh, good evening, Reverend Greenfield. welcome to the show this evening. Pleasure having you here.
I look
He
at
responds with an answer to the question.
I look at religion as this. Let me rephrase that. I look at organized religion as this, as nothing more than a set of guidelines on how to live a good and prosperous life based off of the society that you live in. Nothing more, nothing less.
Excellent answer.
Mm-hmm. Now, Reverend Greenfield has stated that because religions that borrow doctrine do not understand the triune forces. Did I read that right?
Yes, you did read that correctly.
Okay.
Triune verses being Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Thank you. I was going to say, can somebody please give me a definition for that in English?
Yeah, I had to stop and think about that one too. Like, and actually, the triune force exists in all religions, whether you believe it, whether you're aware of it or not, and in all spiritualities as well. There's a triple goddess aspect and a triune god aspect in paganism. Maiden, mother, crone, warrior, child, sage.
Mm-hmm.
That triune exists in all religions, including in animistic, Sun King, God King, etc. Exactly. And it exists in all beliefs, spiritual and religious beliefs, including in spiritualism itself and in animism. That triune aspect existed. Because in animistic practices, in ancient animistic practices, there actually was a triunal force, or three levels of understanding of both the masculine and feminine principles. They actually existed in there, and you can read that, and you can find that and more information on that actually in my website on the actual African heritage of religion, as well as in the second set of things on the modern age.
So then, in a sense, would you say that paganism is a organized religion? Certain sects of it?
To an extent, yes. Very much so.
Because I know the Church of Wicca is recognized as a quote-unquote religion.
Does it get a 501c3 nonprofit status, though?
Exactly.
I think so, actually.
If it does,
it does.
The government recognizes it as a religion.
So, but then do we look at that as the same concept that we look at other religions?
We can.
I don't. I want to say I don't know why we wouldn't. I know why we wouldn't. There are those of us who would feel it's too constrictive. We would prefer not to live under strict guidelines. We prefer to believe what we believe and not be told that what we believe is wrong, just because it's not congruent and not in agreement with this group of people or that group of people. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Right, and that's probably old.
It just means it is what it is.
In 1982, under the Detmer Act, Wicca declared itself a religion. And the reason it declared itself a religion was to, first of all, the Detmer Act was primarily to get the record paganism and Wicca recognized as a part of the religious community within the military, particularly.
Recognition of something other than Christianity within the
right.
government.
Right.
When
it was a win there because of the fact that we were trying. So Wicca became a religion in that aspect.
And there's also there's also different safeguards and stuff in place if you're a recognized religion that you're covered by religious law, so on and so forth, that you would not have unless you were a recognized religion. So yeah, it makes sense that they did it.
And tax
if you remember what I said earlier in the show, I mentioned the fact is that the foundation of religion is not necessarily a negative thing, because it's its way of man assimilating the societal norms so they can live within a society, within each of their societies. Okay, so religion has a spirit. Animism prior to that was just hunter-gatherer. Okay, and everything had a spirit, and nothing was understandable. When we started developing the sapient mind, right, and became more socially aware, we had to start by setting a set of social dictates that were necessary in order for man to survive with man. We had
to have a mutual understanding. I'm not going to hit you. You're not going to hit me. Good?
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess we just answered the question from last week of who set down what morals are supposed to be. It was set down by
the first humans willing to cohabitate.
Exactly. So they're the ones who set down the moral code of this is what's right, this is what's wrong.
Whoa.
Right.
Whoa.
Yeah.
There's the answer to your question from last week, Roderick.
Yep. And I'm also going to need to put in the reminder here that when it comes to over my observations over the years of being in the community, that you're going to find that there are a lot of Wiccans and pagans who balk at the even notion of organized religion, or pagans or Wiccans having anything to do with organized religion. They will balk at it, and that's been my observation.
Okay, but then
that's human. That's people. That's not pagan, non-pagan. That is people.
But then I guess my question then on that would be, define organized religion.
Organized as opposed to a disorganized religion, if there is actually such thing as a disorganized religion.
Mm-hmm.
And now I can see on Roderick's face, he was just about to ask that exact same question.
I mean, what do you got? You caught that too, huh?
Yeah, actually, I want to back up a little bit. Shadow realized or brought out to the fore that what we consider moral, which is a lot of times what we consider religious, what we consider spiritual in that respect, no matter what you are, has been I can never say this word, synthesized concept of groups of people living together. My question has been for the last two sessions we've had, and they're still here today, then what would be the problem with synthesizing paganism? There has to be some commonalities within paganism, practices and everything else that are the same or beneficial to all pagans. And I'm trying to get all of you pagans to tell me what that is, because you got to know it.
I'm not a pagan.
Well, whatever, witches, you got to know what those are. You got to know it some way. Okay, yeah, we all believe in that. We all agree with that. Beyond the "don't hit me, I won't hit you" thing.
Spirituality, literally, spirituality would be the main one.
Well, Christians, Muslims, everybody has that, because spirituality, again, as we define at the top of the show, is just this idea that we realize we're not just an animal; we're something more than that.
Well, exactly. That is what unifies us. That is what unifies us in our belief in our moral code.
Right. That we're not just an animal.
That we're all part of an existence, and we all have to coexist within that existence, as well as we're also co-creators. Okay, we are co-creative forces within that creation itself. The one thing that unifies almost all pagan beliefs and almost all Wiccan beliefs, I notice I said almost all, because there are going to be exceptions to every rule, as there always will be, because it's a human nature to do that.
Because no matter what, the individual fingerprint exists.
Right. There is
in any aspect of anything. I mean, even you can have two people who are firm in their faith in whatever belief they have, whatever religion, whatever you want to call it. They're both going to have individual thoughts, individual thinking, individual beliefs, even within the same aspect. It's not all the same. There is no cookie cutter when it comes to people, and therefore there is no cookie cutter when it comes to religion, spirituality, anything you want to call it.
I'll be a good example. I've been a solitary witch all my life. I don't have a religion. I don't want a religion because I don't have time for it because I don't need it. I believe that religion that you want to build yourself in is something you can live by if you make right with things in your life. Even the wrongs you still have to accept. Because nothing in life is perfect unless you accept right or wrongs. Religions, I think, is based on how they want to control, how you want to control your faith. And then, like y'all said, no matter how you want to look at it from different aspects. I believe if someone wants to believe in the aspect of religion, I believe it can start with yourself. Once you be true with yourself, I think you could be open, more accessible to what religions really are with good acceptance and good research and go from there. That's just my opinion on that.
And I will totally concur with your opinion on that.
I completely agree with it too.
Because let's put it this way, spirituality and the key to spirituality, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, is the fact is knowing and being aware that we are co-creators and creation of a higher force that we cannot define, that we cannot get reduced to moral value, to any particular value. And thus we have faith that it exists because we see it in our everyday lives, in everything around us and surrounding us, in nature, in the universe itself, that this exists around us. Now, accepting our minuet role in that, creation, and we have a minimum role in it, but we also have a role in the creation force and creation. But accepting our role is the key to defining what spirituality really is knowing and accepting your role and living to that knowledge, living and understanding that your role is important, but it is just as important that the role of everybody else around you has that same role that is just as important within. So respecting everybody and everything within and around you is the key to spirituality and the key commonality that you will find in pagan traditions, is the respect of all things within nature.
Even repo men. Little inside joke there.
We're not gonna go into that discussion right now. That will be an after.
Nope,
the
I'm not.
show
Nope, I'm not
conversation.
touching that one tonight.
Bravo.
Hey,
Bravo.
a premise is only as good as it is when you can push it in every area of your life. If it doesn't apply somewhere, that might not be your true premise.
There you go.
Just
I agree.
Just checking.
I agree.
We have a comment from the
To David, I think I put a
David Larson.
yeah, somebody invited, I think.
Yeah, in my humble opinion, when boiled down to the basic tenets, there really is not a
spirits. I think he says.
Okay, I wonder what he mean by
spits.
that.
No, he does spits. Spits of
It's different between most religions,
Yeah.
with the exception of what different groups of man have set forth, not the deities. In other words, the deities are common to almost all religions. What man sets forth is what is the only difference within. So that's what is what Dave said. That's the only difference between most religions.
Right.
Most all religions have the same tenets, the same ideas, the same thing, and that is basically
You're healed.
The universal respect of the creation itself and respect of each other. That is common in all religions, so that's something that, without argument, we can say is 100%.
What, the respect of all religions?
Right.
You're talking about amongst religions in general?
Most religions in general should be respect, especially in paganism and spirituality.
If you respect some, you have to respect all. Otherwise, you're just as bad as the ones that
Exactly.
Right.
I totally agree.
One last comment here. The greatest secret of life is that we have to admit we are as imperfect as the universe itself.
Well, and that's true because the universe is always changing.
And the perfection is just a word, not something we can actually see or feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because again, I'd ask the question, define perfect.
No such thing yet.
No.
Everybody.
And if
has
it's
their own
out there
definition.
somewhere, we ain't gonna see it yet.
Oh,
You
hell
know,
no.
the funny thing about words like imperfect and also impossible, okay, is if you break the word down, it's I'm perfect and I'm possible. Okay, so if you look at the word imperfect as being a sense of perfection, it is the perfection of creation that has made you that being. So yes, you're an imperfect being, but you're the perfection of creation. You're a part of creation, creative force. Like I'm impossible, I am possible. There's nothing impossible about it.
I am absolutely impossible. The odds of me becoming a human being instead of a toad,
Right.
a billion to one. You know, I mean, so I am impossible. My existence would be impossible were it not possible.
Were it not possible, exactly. So you see what well, I was going with the imperfection and perfection.
Yes.
That's where the impossibility meets the possibility.
Exactly. We are all part of the divine perfection, if you will. Okay. We're
And the
imperfect.
respect of that, the admiration and the awe of that is something that we all see, acknowledge, and celebrate. And I think that is what is universal amongst pagans.
And that's spirituality.
Among anybody who believes in spirituality, anybody who believes they're not just a creature, animal, has that element in them.
Yes.
They realize you don't have to be called a pagan. You can be in any kind of other religion, but you realize you're a spiritual being of some sort.
I'm a spiritual being.
Right.
So,
okay, we got just a couple of minutes left. Any final thoughts?
I can give you a quick point of view as a solitary witch, not a pagan, not a Wiccan. As last time we discussed, when you're a solitary witch, we adapt to adopt like we adopt to adapt. We don't have a set god nor a set goddess. We can choose one or we can not choose one and still live our life the witchy way as correctly as fit.
Right.
Now, I'm learning a lot more from Brother Edward and from y'all. I'm learning a lot more from the Wiccan side of the view. Because as a solitary practitioner, never been around nothing like this before. So as I'm going and learning, I appreciate more that what I'm learning from y'all. I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. One more comment from Reverend Ravenwolf Greenfield says, you said about synthesis, my 2 cents. Paganism is a sandbox. We have an outer construct, but synthesis is harder whenever there's many different ideas of what to build. Not impossible, but hard to get everyone to always agree 100% on what they want to build and see within the sands. And I will totally agree with this statement.
Absolutely.
Yep, I agree with that statement completely. Yeah. And the one thing that I am going to stress is that people, no matter what religion that you're following, okay, this is going to span across every faith, every religion, is that we must have a line of communication. Because if we don't have that, we're going to be right back at square one.
It's like anything in life, communication is key.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I want to say a very, very special thank you to Roderick for being with us for the last five Saturdays in a row, man.
Okay.
Right there. And I want to say a very sincere thank you from the bottom of my heart, because you brought roundness to the round table in a way that we've not really had in the past. No, it has nothing to do with the shape of any of our faces. It has to do with the fact that you bring a perspective that is not pagan to the table, and that's something that I think we need in order. We can't have an open discussion without having someone from that walk present and representing and accounting for that perspective. So thank you for bringing that to us and to our viewers. That was extremely important. And the way you did it was non-confrontational. and yet was great about opening up that line of communication. I hope that continues.
Well, thank you for the
beyond
opportunity.
us.
Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Sorry, Ed, I had to get that out.
No problem. We are now at the point of close. I'd like to thank all my co-panelists and my guests for being here. We much appreciate everybody's commentary tonight, and I also want to thank all the members of our audience who were present with us this evening for giving us an excellent insight and commentations. And at that point, I'm going to say good night and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate you all being here, and we hope that you could come back to our roundtables, and we look forward to seeing you here. At that point, good night. God us bless, guide, and protect.
Pleasant journeys.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good night.